This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hospitals in Kinshasa overwhelmed by a surge in COVID-19 cases. Attackers kill 53 people in Nigeria as the country struggles to crush militant groups. And one person killed and dozens others injured in mass shootings in the U.S. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Vivian. Few more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, South Africa has a new plan to revive the grounded national airline. And in your sport, Uganda's national rally champion Yasin Nassar relishes the upcoming WRC Safari rally test. We begin the hour in the DRC, where President Felix Tshisekedi says that hospitals in the capital Kinshasa are overwhelmed with COVID-19 cases. On Friday, the Democratic Republic of Congo recorded 254 infections, the highest number of coronavirus cases since the outbreak began. Addressing the media on Saturday, Tshisekedi said that he would be taking drastic measures to combat the spread of the virus. The DRC has so far recorded about 35,000 cases and 830 deaths, including those of prominent politicians. Less than 30,000 citizens have been inoculated in the country that has a population of more than 100 million people. Well, let's now cross over to Chris Ochamringa, who is in Kinshasa for us for more on that story. Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us. What is the situation at this time in the DRC, Chris? And also, what new measures is the government taking to contain this wave?
Well, Hannah, the DRC is experiencing the third wave of infections. Officials from the National Institute for Biomedical Research say there are 35,000 COVID-19 cases across the country, but about 25,000 of those cases have been recorded here in the capital, Kinshasa. And they are very concerned because people have not been respecting the health measures issued by the experts. And so the president mentioned that the hospitals in Kinshasa have been overwhelmed by patients with COVID-19, and they do not have enough equipment to support, to help these people, the patients. The country has very few oxygen cylinders, and so it's a cause for concern. The president also mentioned that, the AstraZeneca vaccine has been problematic because of fears the Congolese have about side effects, and so he's been talking about bringing in other vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna so that more Congolese can start taking up these vaccines. Now, the measures that the government has taken is that it has imposed a curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. and also urged people to keep wearing masks and, keep social distancing. But that hasn't been happening. Very many people crowd in places. They do not wear masks. The police who are supposed to enforce, these measures haven't been, following through. And so the cases have really shot up, and it's a cause for concern among Congolese officials. Now, the DRC government has set a meeting with international health experts and local Congolese doctors on the 16th of this March to come up with strategies to increase the uptake, to convince people to start taking up these vaccines and also follow the measures which will help reduce the spread of COVID-19. Hannah?
Chris, I just want to ask you really quickly there, do you think from what you're hearing from people on the street as you speak to the public, does it seem as though if there are other vaccines other than the AstraZeneca, which you say that there's been, for people in Congo, they seem to be really reluctant to take that one. Do you think that they might feel differently from what you're hearing from them if there are other vaccines available in the country?
Well, that is just the hope that the president has, but I'm not very sure about that because, there has been a lot of misinformation spread on social media about vaccines in general, that this is a fake scheme. COVID-19 does not exist in the DRC, and so people have been resisting to go out and get these jabs. And so we're not very sure whether if they bring new vaccines, it will change. Because Congolese people, were really angered by some statements that were made earlier on when this outbreak just occurred in the Western world, where there were two French doctors who said that if they find out a COVID-19 vaccines, then the clinical trials should be done among African patients. That really angered very many Congolese, because soon after that statement by the two French doctors, the DRC, the head of the DRC's National Task Force, Dr. Jean-Jacques Muyembe, said that the DRC was one of the candidates, the countries that would accept to carry out clinical trials. People were saying, look, we're not guinea pigs. And so they said, to hell with this COVID-19 vaccine. That really set the tone of what we are seeing today. And so we're not very sure whether there will be a change, but there is a campaign by the local officials and international partners to convince the people that the vaccines, COVID-19 vaccines, are the best way to stop the spread of this disease.
Thank you so much for all that, Chris. Chris Ochamaringa speaking to us live from the DRC capital, Kinshasa. Well, the World Health Organization has continued to urge rich countries to help poor nations vaccinate their people. According to the UN agency, the world can only be safe if everyone is protected. CGTN's Insecurity spoke to WHO's Kenya representative and now reports.
In the global race to inoculate people with COVID-19 vaccines, Africa is sadly at the back of the pack. The outgoing World Health Organization Kenyan representative Dr. Rudy Eggers says Africa has barely gotten out of the starting blocks.
And this is very important. The danger is to everybody. If you don't protect countries such as Kenya and you get continuing circulation of virus, it means that variants can develop, and even variants that then bypass the existing vaccines. So that's the danger.
At 32 million doses, Africa accounts for less than 1% of the more than 2.1 billion doses administered globally. Just 2% of the continent's nearly 1.3 billion people have received one dose, and only 9.4 million Africans are fully vaccinated. WHO says dose sharing is a do-or-die matter for Africa.
It's really a call to those countries that are manufacturing and are purchasing these vaccines to share that with Kenya and with Africa as a whole. In the current situation, that is the quick fix, the thing that we need at the moment.
South Africa, the continent's most robust economy, has only vaccinated 0.8% of its population, despite having Africa's highest coronavirus caseload. That is according to a worldwide tracker kept by Johns Hopkins University. Hundreds of thousands of South Africa's healthcare workers are still waiting for their shot. Nigeria has only vaccinated 0.1 of its over 200 million people. Uganda has been forced to recall vaccines destined for rural areas because it doesn't have enough to fight outbreaks in big urban centers like the capital of Kampala. The continent of 1.3 billion people is facing a severe vaccine shortage at a time infections are rising. WHO wants leaders of wealthy nations to share vaccines, something the United States has agreed to do. The Biden administration made its first major move to ease the crisis last week. The US says it will share an initial batch of 25 million spare doses with desperate countries globally, including those in Africa. WHO is also banking on China after Sinopharm vaccines were given emergency approval. The super economy from Asia has shown its willingness to help smaller economies inoculate their people.
The Chinese production is actually relatively high, so it will mean that it would provide additional vaccines that we would previously not have. So it will help a lot.
Billionaire British philanthropist Mo Ibrahim, who was born in Sudan, says the pandemic era phrase, "Nobody is safe until everybody is safe," should be the rallying call at this time. Enoxicoli, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
But British Prime Minister Boris Johnson seems to have hinted that he plans to delay lifting coronavirus restrictions. UK media are reporting that the government is more likely to announce a postponement of the unlocking by up to 4 weeks. That's over concern at the spread of the Delta variant, first identified in India. A formal announcement is expected on Monday about the restrictions, which were to be lifted on June the 21st. Guy Henderson has more in London.
What you're seeing behind me here in central London, in sort of central West London, is stage 3 of that four-stage process. So cafes, pubs, restaurants are open. 6 people or 2 households are allowed to meet inside those premises. Up to 30 people are allowed to meet outdoors, so still not allowing the kind of big events, weddings, festivals, that kind of thing that you'd usually see through the summer months. And the 21st of June was penciled in by the government back in February as the date that you could see that final unlocking take place. But officials have always said that was going to depend on the data. And at the moment, the data is showing a significant increase in number of coronavirus cases. At the latest count, more than 7,000 over the last 24-hour period for the 4th day running, and also a suggestion that hospitalisations are on the rise again as well. And so that has led to reporting over the weekend that perhaps the Prime Minister might be set to delay that final stage of unlocking by up to 4 weeks. Now, Boris Johnson is still down in Cornwall at the G7. He was asked about this issue, and this is what he had to say about it.
I think that we'll have some pragmatic solutions, and if we don't, then I think that what our friends have also understood is that it's the prime duty of the UK government to uphold the territorial integrity of the United Kingdom, and that's what we're going to do, and we'll do whatever it takes to ensure that.
Well, it's been a long, long wait to what a lot of people across England and the UK have dubbed Freedom Day, the day when all legal restrictions for coronavirus will be removed.
I wouldn't support it because I think the whole point of the vaccination programme was to protect kind of older and vulnerable people, and to me it looks like they've all been vaccinated anyway. So it's just kind of like, if we keep worrying about variants and we keep pushing it into the long grass, then where does it end? So I think now's the moment. Like, that was when we were promised 21st of June, and we should just stick to that.
I think people are making more out of it than they should.
More out of the delays.
Out of the delays and everything. There's no grey area here. Either you stay healthy or you risk not staying healthy. Well, there is no alternative to that.
Well, 55.4% or so of the adult population of the UK have now been vaccinated fully. That is one of the most advanced vaccination programs of any country in the world, and yet it does seem as though the threat, the risk, the danger has still not been entirely stamped out.
Well, let's go to Nigeria now, where armed bandits have killed at least 53 people. The violence took place in Zamfara state in the northwestern part of the country. The police say that on Thursday through Friday, gunmen riding motorcycles invaded 6 villages, including Kadawa, Kwata, and Maduba. The gang attacked farmers in their fields and pursued others who fled to escape the assault. Policemen have since been deployed in the area following the attacks. Meanwhile, a televised address, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to end insecurity in the country. Buhari had vowed to end the Boko Haram insurgency when he was re-elected in 2015, but he says government efforts unintentionally spread more violence to other areas. For more on the insecurity in Nigeria, I'm joined by Idayat Hassan from Abuja. He is the director of the Center for Democracy and Development. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, let's just start with Nigeria having witnessed a surge in attacks in recent weeks, and it seems to be getting worse there. Why has the country failed to end the violence?
Oh, thank you very much. I think importantly, Nigeria has never had it this bad. Across the 6 geopolitical zones, there are different and varying level of insecurity plaguing it, from the herdsman to the farmers' conflict and banditry, kidnapping, Boko Haram. Like, it's immense. But why is it difficult is, one, the number of conflicts and a proliferation of actors who are also fomenting this insecurity. Then the government's consistent approach of addressing this insecurity with the enemy-centric approach, which means actually boots on ground. So you are just going to fight fire for fire, according to General Buhari, our General, of course, President Buhari on Friday, when he had another chat with the Nigerian National Broadcaster, NTA. He insisted that it will be a fire for fire approach. So this enemy-centric approach, what it does in the real sense, is that it ends up getting more people to join the violence due to the fact that on several occasions there are extrajudicial killings. The second fact is also that the number of the security forces policing this nation, either police or the armed forces, is actually small compared to the actors we are dealing with. So when you look at the Zamfara, in Zamfara, where 50 people is being killed in the last 48 hours, the bandit comes on motorbikes, and each of these motorbikes has got an average of 2 to 3 of the bandits on it. Multiply that by 50, you are talking of 200 of them heavily armed with sophisticated weapons, such as the rocket propeller guns, and of course, the normal AK-47 or AK-49. This weaponry, 200 of them, in a local government, which might likely have not more than 40 or 50 policemen to confront these over 200 with sophisticated weapons. So we really need to rejig the architecture in such a way that we use both the kinetic and non-kinetic mechanistic means. Is basically Nigerian having to create more jobs for people. Infrastructural development, it's also very important, and a form of a transitional justice mechanism, which will actually balance the rights between victims and perpetrators, such that victims also do not take up arms to join the perpetrators in attacking the fabrics of the Nigerian state.
Idayat, thank you so much for all that. Idayat Hassan from Abuja. She's the director of the Center for Democracy and Development. Well, Morocco is hosting for the 17th time the U.S.-led African Lion military exercise with over 7,000 participants from 9 countries. The operation is aimed at strengthening cooperation among partner nations while enhancing operations in Africa. The air training exercise also features the U.S. and Moroccan air maneuvers, including bombers, fighters, and aerial refueling. Soldiers have also been engaged in humanitarian activities in the country. Meanwhile, Senegal and Tunisia are undertaking similar exercises. This edition of the African Lion military exercise is said to be the largest activity to ever be held on the continent.
Today we're using practice rockets. So the range of the practice rockets around 17 kilometers. Today's range to target was 14 kilometers. We have a suite of munitions in our inventory that can range from 35 kilometers to 70 kilometers with rockets. And then we can also shoot missiles that will range up to 300 kilometers.
Obviously, it's a great opportunity to work and maintain the alliance with the Moroccan government. It's a great opportunity to work side by side with our Moroccan medical counterparts. It's also a great opportunity to involve American airmen and American soldiers working together to provide medical care that's very well needed here and very well deserved.
Well, let's now take a short break and return. More news, including one person killed and dozens injured in mass shootings in the U.S. And we highlight how people living with albinism in Nigeria are fighting stigma.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, let's go over to the United States, where mass shootings there have left several dead and dozens wounded. In Savannah, Georgia, one person died and 8 others, including 2 children, were injured in a shooting on Friday night. On the south side of Chicago, 2 men opened fire on people standing on the sidewalk, killing 1 and leaving 9 others wounded. At least 14 people have been wounded, 2 of them critically, in a mass shooting in downtown Austin, Texas.
We have developed suspects in this case. There are 2 male suspects. This does appear to be an isolated incident between 2 parties. So that's why I say that most of the victims were innocent bystanders, but we're still sorting out all of the victims to see what their involvement is in this case.
Well, staying in the States, the U.S. Justice Department is opening an independent probe into a controversial Trump-era leak investigation. This follows revelations that former administration officials seized phone data of opposition Democrat politicians. Several high-profile reporters were also targeted. Toby Muse has more from Washington.
Democrats are already calling it a gross abuse of power on the part of the former administration of President Donald Trump. The announcement of the new investigation comes after Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell, both vocal critics of former President Trump, revealed that the Department of Justice had seized their Apple phone data, as well as that of other members of the House intelligence community and their relatives, including, in one case, a minor.
I hope Trump supporters who fear Big Brother see that Donald Trump was the biggest brother we've ever seen in our country, who did weaponize this.
In an exceedingly rare move, the government subpoenaed the phone records of the representatives of Congress back in 2018. But the government included a gag order preventing Apple from reporting it for 3 years. The Trump administration was looking for who was leaking information on the investigation into possible links between Trump and Russia. Apple has said it handed over metadata and account subscriber information, but not emails or pictures. Senate Democratic leaders are calling on former Attorneys General Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions to testify about these phone seizures, calling them a gross abuse of power. Barr has told Politico that he doesn't recall knowing of the probe of the representatives of Congress or their staffers. Democrats accuse the Trump administration of using the Department of Justice as a way to harass Trump's personal enemies, the loudest voices investigating these links between Trump and Russia. The Trump administration also seized the phone records of a number of journalists who were also investigating the story of Trump and Russia. Toby Muse reporting for CGTN, Washington, D.C.
Well, Nigeria is joining the rest of the world in marking International Albinism Day. The country is aiming to better uphold the human rights of people living with albinism. The United Nations set aside the 13th of June each year to mark the day. Our correspondent, Semia Kende, reports on how persons living with albinism in Nigeria are fighting to overcome stigma and discrimination against them.
43-year-old Musa Bre is a politician aspiring for the position of councillor in the forthcoming local government elections in Plateau State, north central Nigeria. But he says finding acceptance among the people in his community has been challenging.
It has not been easy for me at all, because the people in my community, especially those of them that are the stakeholders, think I can't do it because of my condition. But the love that I have for the general population is pushing me, and I'm not going to give up.
Albinism is a rare, non-contagious, genetically inherited condition. People who are born with it often have permanent visual impairment and also face discrimination due to their skin color. The United Nations says albinos have been attacked and killed in 28 countries in Africa in the past decade. Nigeria is ranked as one of the countries with the highest number of albinos in the world, with an estimated 2 million people living with the condition. Activists at this albino foundation say the government has not done enough to help the community.
Persons with albinism, particularly in Nigeria, faces a lot of challenges. And the challenges are enormous because most of them are cultural beliefs, there are myths, and there are other sorts of challenges. The stigmatization, the marginalization has been so much because even in the workplace, you hardly see persons with albinism gainfully employed in offices. And the government has not made a deliberate attempt or provision to pave way for the employment of these persons with albinism.
Campaigners here are now pushing to ensure that persons with albinism get equal protection and basic human rights.
The government should give strict laws to enable persons with albinism also have jobs. Now that the constitutional review is going on, this should be included in the constitution so that it's a right for persons with albinism to also get such jobs. And there should be laws with health care. Persons with albinism also are exposed to things like skin cancer and visual impairment. And all this, they need to be included in the health sector, the health laws.
A bill for the establishment of an agency for albinism and hypopigmentation is currently on the floor of the National Assembly.
The government says the agency will be in charge of promoting access to education, health, employment, social rights and justice for persons living with albinism. It will also protect their fundamental human rights and promote freedom from stigmatization, prejudices and stereotypes.
Musa Bre and others with this condition hope the bill, if it is passed, will help reduce stigma and superstitious beliefs about albinos. Tessim Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
Let's head over to Côte d'Ivoire now, where the government has warned locals against employing children to work in cocoa fields. CGTN's Astatal reports.
The Ivorian government has prohibited children from being employed in cocoa fields. Authorities in the country have initiated operations to track down all those who exploit children in the fields.
Taking a minor child from one area to another to work is intolerable. If a person is found guilty of imposing dangerous work on his or her children, he or she will suffer the full rigor of the law.
Authorities say they have since discovered that most of the children being exploited in cocoa plantations in Côte d'Ivoire come from neighboring Burkina Faso and Mali.
I'm removing the garbage around the cocoa beans. I asked my little brothers to come and help me because they'd come back from school earlier than expected because the teacher is absent. So I preferred to keep them busy this way to avoid them going out for a walk.
In 2018, the Children of Africa Foundation provided the Subre region with a reception center for child victims of trafficking and exploitation. This aimed at helping reduce the cases of child labor in the region.
We want to get the children out of the trafficking or labor situation they are in. By keeping them in this center, we offer them the opportunity to go back to school or to learn a trade that is much easier to do. For example, here we teach them rabbit breeding, snail breeding, hairdressing or sewing. This will allow them to have a good economic situation when they leave the center. It keeps them busy and all their rights are respected.
According to the International Cocoa Initiative Foundation, nearly 1.56 million children work in West Africa's cocoa fields. Some studies show that the state of the roads and the distance from schools is one of the reasons why many children stay in the cocoa fields with their parents. To prevent this, the Ivorian government is working to build new schools closer to camps and villages. Astatal, CGTN.
The business news is coming up after the break. Here's what you can expect. South Africa has a new plan to revive the grounded national airline.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting.
It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for the business news. Let's head over to South Africa, where the country's grounded national airline may soon take to the skies once again. The government has agreed to sell a majority stake in South African Airways. A 51% stake will now belong to a local jet leasing company and a private equity firm. This will rid the government of an entity that has long been a drain on state finances. SAA has been under a form of bankruptcy protection since December 2019. Its fortunes worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic. The equity partner will allow the airline to resume operations. We'll head over to East Africa now, where Kenya has once again topped the region as a country with the most expensive national budget in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. Kenya's budget reached over $33 billion, surpassing Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda combined. A huge chunk of the money will cater for spending, covering salaries and loans. The government also plans to collect at least $16.6 billion and seek a further $8.83 billion to fill the deficit. Tanzania's budget reached $16 billion, and its government will collect $9.2 billion to the Tanzania Revenue Authority. Uganda's budget reached $13 billion. It focuses allocations on national security, infrastructure development, health, and economic recovery. Well, over in West Africa, Ghana's economy is on a steady path to recovery after taking a massive hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. And let's say the rollout of vaccines could quicken growth in that economy. But a global shortage of vaccines threatens the country's full economic recovery. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Business activities at this market in Accra are back to pre-pandemic level, according to traders here. All the shops have reopened after lockdown restrictions were eased, and Ghana's economy is beginning to recover from the disruptions caused by COVID-19. But analysts say it may take years for the economy to rebound fully.
These are early days for us to say Ghana's economy has recovered. As I predicted last year, it's going to take us between 3 to 5 years. The recovery is going to take the form of a U-shape, either than a V-shape. V-shape is normally when the economy falls, it bounces back to pre-COVID. But what we see in Ghana is that it's going to be U-shaped. It's going to be gradual, and then it will pick up from where we were pre-COVID.
Last year, Ghana's economy contracted to 0.4% due to the pandemic. The World Bank has estimated the country's economy to grow by 1.4% this year.
Some sectors of Ghana's economy have been hit hard by COVID, and I can make mention of tourism. Once the inoculation goes on, the vaccination program is able to go on as effective as we wanted, then these sectors of the economy will be able to bounce back to lead to the full recovery that we want to achieve.
Ghana has so far inoculated nearly 900,000 people against COVID-19. It aims to vaccinate 20 million people by the end of the year. But there are concerns that it may not be able to meet this target due to the global slump in supply of vaccines. Still, the government says it is working to get more vaccines under the WHO-backed COVAX Global Vaccine Sharing Initiative. While the country rolls out its COVID-19 vaccines, experts are concerned about a threat of a third wave because many people have stopped wearing face masks and are not practicing other safety measures.
We have to balance the economic, social aspect with health. I understand that. And so the easy and the other thing had to be done one way or the other. But systems were supposed to have been in place, and that, unfortunately, are not being followed.
Analysts say the success of a vaccine rollout could help boost the economy. They want the government to step up efforts towards acquiring more COVID-19 vaccines to inoculate its people. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And now for some fascinating innovation coming out of Tunisia, where a group of Tunisian engineers and researchers have developed the country's first robot which cleans trash and plastic from the Mediterranean coastline. The autonomous robot can travel from miles from departure points at any port, boat or vessel. CGTN's Adnan Chouachi has more on this report from Tunis.
This floating vessel was tested by marine and mechanical engineers at the National Institute of Science and Technology of the Sea in the capital city Tunis. The robot is steered from the port by an operator using a controller. 2 solar panels on the top power the machine.
This autonomous robot can clean large areas in a short period of time. The vessel can enter anywhere between boats where humans cannot go to clean the port. Now getting rid of marine debris is possible even in inaccessible areas.
Scientists warn that by the year 2050, the world's seas and oceans are projected to have more plastic fragments than fish. Marine experts say that plastic pollution has been on the rise around the Mediterranean.
Marine pollution is alarming. We can easily see its consequences at any of the beaches in Tunisia and the Mediterranean basin. Wind pushes our trash and plastics away from our shores. We can find our debris in Italy, while trash from Italy is found on the Tunisian coast. The robot will not eliminate all plastics, but it will reduce marine pollution.
The Environment and Quality of Life Department plans to approve the deployment of the device at tourist and commercial ports along the Tunisian coastline.
Tunisia has launched a national strategy to limit plastic pollution from different sources. Our objective is to achieve plastic-free coastlines. Technology is very helpful because autonomous cleaning robots can operate in any weather. The cost of operation is very limited when compared to the deployment of thousands of people to collect plastic on the coastline.
The cleaning system is designed to collect large visible plastic objects, marine litter as well as microplastics. The vessel is fitted with transmitters and sensors, so it can communicate its position to the operator via satellites. The floating robot for eliminating debris was designed to collect trash and plastic and protect the coastline. The development of dozens of robots will be sponsored by the Environment Department and the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's stay in Tunisia, which has announced that it plans to gradually replace subsidies with direct support for those who need it most. It's part of reforms needed to secure financing from the International Monetary Fund. Tunisia also plans to cut the public sector wage bill, which is among the highest in the world. Adnan Chouachi tells us more.
Tunisian authorities have said that redirecting the subsidies is a necessary operation amid an ongoing economic crisis that has been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Tunisia subsidizes vegetable oil, bread and many other food products as well as energy. The move to redirect the subsidy is part of the structural economic reform program which has been developed by the Prime Minister's economic advisors.
The government will redirect the subsidy to those who need it the most. All poor, average income, even above average income families will get the subsidy. Anyone who needs and deserves state support will get it. Redirecting subsidy will better serve the population.
Economists say the reforms to cut subsidies would involve first phasing out food subsidies and then gradually ending subsidies for electricity, water and petrol. Tunisia is currently seeking a $4 billion loan program from the International Monetary Fund. Cutting subsidies is part of the recommendations of the IMF.
The state aims to enact economic reforms to reduce chronic fiscal deficits. These measures are urgent. There are other midterm reform plans which take into consideration the IMF's program. Tunisia cannot revive its ailing economy and seek foreign loans without showing the concrete results of its reform plan.
Tunisian authorities say the economic situation facing the country over the last decade has been difficult and has worsened by the COVID-19 downturn. Therefore, the next reforms will be very painful. One of the main axes of these reforms is restructuring state enterprises, their operation mode and their ability to generate profits.
It's time for real economic redress. The government needs to explain the reforms to the population. We can no longer talk about salary hikes and state spending without production and productivity. Tunisia's financial resources have doubled over the last decade, but the public sector wage bill and expenses are still too high.
Prime Minister Hisham Meshishi promised that his government will not initiate reforms without the agreement of various parties, including national organizations such as the Tunisian General Labour Union and the Tunisian Confederation of Industry, Trade and Handicrafts.
Many Tunisians believe that the subsidy system, which was put in place in the 1970s, has always improved the purchasing power of millions of people. However, economists warn that this costly system is no longer efficient after 1 decade of economic difficulties and social unrest. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Over in southern Africa, Zimbabwe authorities have threatened to ban firms that exploit the gap between the official and parallel market exchange rate from a weekly currency auction. This follows a statutory instrument passed recently aimed at tackling abuse of foreign currency acquired through official channels and later traded on the street. From Harare, here's Farai Makutuya with that report.
Zimbabwe launched a foreign currency auction in June 2020 to try to tame a volatile black market and to ease access to forex for importers.
And what we decided on in the Reserve Bank was it would be a Dutch auction. So we put a certain amount of foreign exchange, $35 million, on the auction each week, and then people bid for it, and we accept the highest bids. And what you do is you simply go to your bank. You simply have enough foreign local currency to buy whatever you want to do. Your bank then may tell your bank to bid for so much at such a price.
The weekly auction is credited with stabilizing the Zimbabwe dollar, but because demand for foreign currency continues to outstrip supply, the gap between the official and black market exchange rate has progressively widened, creating arbitrage opportunities which some rogue dealers have latched onto.
The abuse is when somebody goes and applies for foreign currency at the auction, supposedly to fund imports, and then they don't go and then pay for those imports. They then direct it to the parallel market. That goes against the letter and the spirit of the whole auction process. The other form of abuse is where they abuse the auction process by bringing in overstated invoices from their suppliers, who may happen to be parent companies or related companies.
Government has recently introduced legislation to punish errant players, but some fear this could upset the recently achieved stability. However, others feel the measures are necessary.
Consumers, ironically, have also benefited because those who were abusing the loopholes would need to go to the market and attract customers by way of low prices. So it's like akin to buying stolen goods. When you buy stolen goods, the prices are bound to be cheaper than those who are not stealing. But when the stealing stops, prices are bound to go up.
And certainly, it's certainly shaken things up. People are much more careful now about applying. Their documentation has to be legitimate. They have to be legitimately in business. They have to be importing real stuff.
Government has been urged to supplement the tighter controls by increasing the amount of foreign currency availed on the auction. Farai Makutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's now take a short break. More news when we return. Do stay with us.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Welcome back. Well, South Africa's famed Rooibos has made history by becoming the first African food to receive the International Protection Designation from the European Commission. The classification means that Rooibos, which is mainly consumed as a tea, will now join the likes of champagne, Irish whiskey, and Roquefort cheese. The status also preserves the authenticity of Rooibos products from specific geographic areas in South Africa, including in key growing areas of Western Cape. CGTN's Travis Andrews has the details.
It's been 10 years in the making, but now South Africa's Rooibos has finally received the European Union's protected designation of origin status. Rooibos products can now use the EU's logo to indicate authenticity and quality to both European and international consumers. Local stakeholders in the Rooibos industry clearly see the benefits to this newfound status.
Means a lot for us in two aspects. On the one end, for the marketing of Rooibos as a category. Obviously, the PDO mark, trademark, and logo is well known, especially in Europe. So to market the brand as truly South African and to let people know that it is coming from the original place where it is grown on one end is great. But then on the other end, also to protect the industry, protect the growers of Rooibos, protect the traditional knowledge holders of Rooibos, to protect the brand owners and the heritage.
The classification means that South African Rooibos will receive the same EU geographic protection status afforded to other products such as champagne and gorgonzola. The tea is derived from the Rooibos plant that is grown in areas such as South Africa's Western and Northern Cape. It's not just consumed as a popular tea, it's also used in the production of certain wines due to its antioxidant benefits. South Africa currently produces around 15,000 tons of Rooibos tea a year, but the designation of origin status will likely incentivize the local industry to deepen market penetration.
We haven't seen much change in the traditional markets in terms of volume. So Japan, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, the US, they sort of remain the big five in terms of volume. So most definitely the brand owners and the exporters of Rooibos would be looking at every possible market where Rooibos can be grown.
Most stakeholders in South Africa's Rooibos sector believe the EU classification would open up new opportunities not just in new and existing markets, but in the value-added sector for products such as Rooibos wines, cosmetic products, and even sports drinks, which could be produced here in the Western Cape and exported globally. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, Egypt is known around the world for its cultural heritage and history of pharaohs, pyramids, and the mythical Sphinx. Millions of tourists regularly flock to the famous Giza pyramids and its museums to catch a glimpse of these ancient wonders. Well, now they have a chance to take a piece of ancient Egypt home with high-quality replicas being made in the country, as Satal reports.
With a delicate hand, artists at the Kunuz factory create life-size pharaonic busts. The replicas can go for as much as $12,748. Each replica receives a stamp from the High Council of Antiquities.
Our product is a copy of the original artifact. They are made with high-quality materials. We have an example such as this one, and Anubis, a copy such as this one. It holds the stamp from the High Council of Antiquities, a barcode, and then there's a certificate that states this is an exact copy of the original artifact. This is unavailable in ordinary Egyptian markets or with things that are sold in commercial markets.
Making high-quality pieces is something the artists here pride themselves on.
Of course, it makes me sad seeing low-quality replicas, because it is my job. When I see something that isn't well done, I notice immediately, and this feeling is internal. So when I came here, I saw things were entirely different. Things here are original. You are producing something original, and you produce it with love. That is what matters.
The 10,000 square meter Kunuz factory was inaugurated in March by the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. Many of the replicas made here have been sold to the Egyptian Museum of Civilization. This project is part of Egypt's plans to revive the tourism sector. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, let's now take a short break. Here's what's coming up when we return. Uganda's national rally champion Yasin Nassar relishes the upcoming WRC Safari Rally test.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for your sport news. The World Motor